Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Last we left off, I had given you 4 ideas for an epic sorcerer to play in an RPG. Today, I'm going to give you 4 ideas for what the hag might be brewing in their cauldron. So, if you want to support the church and help me keep doing what I'm doing, remember to pay your tithing and leave a like, and let us pray. Idea number 1, Rattling Storms. So your hag is brewing up some sort of stew filled with bones, and the steam that is rising up off of this cauldron is going up into the atmosphere and creating these cursed thunderstorms, and wherever their rains fall, the undead rise up from the flooded soils. Now that could be skeletons, sort of with the name Rattling Storms, but it also could be zombies or any undead you want it to be, and I think that this idea fits perfectly for a sea hag, and the stew of bones that she's making it's all brewed from the corpse of a storm giant that has washed ashore, just like a whale, whale fall is when it sinks, but a whale that has washed up ashore and its dead carcass is there. She's been going out and harvesting it for meat and giblets and taking all the bones and making the stew, using the innate stormy magics of the storm giant, right, to create this. And what's really, really fun about this, besides just an adventure to go fight a sea hag that is creating storms that are raising undead, like that's really exciting, is this is an environmental hazard that will follow the characters wherever they are and wherever they choose to go. So if you just have this as a little rumor that is starting to circulate through your world of, this strange thunderstorms that are particularly violent, like the wrath of a storm giant is being hurled down upon the land. Wink, wink, right? Wherever that's going on, undead are rising up and attacking these towns. Now the characters kind of have to be like, well, where can we go that is safe? Like, anytime they set out from town, or even when they're in town, like every day, you can basically be rolling a d4 or a d6, be like, is there a rainstorm today? And then on a 1, yep, the rains come in, and now you have a possible encounter with some undead. That's really cool and really dangerous for your overland travel. But what I think is also really fun about this is it doesn't have to, you don't have to start your campaign in a coastal environment where this is the first adventure the characters go off on. Your characters in the campaign could take place and start inland, miles inland, but this threat of these storm clouds are rolling in across the realm. This sea hag, maybe this is like a higher level BBG, it's a coven of sea hags that are sending these storms inland to terrorize the people of the kingdom who were normally outside their reach. That is really cool, and it's something that can pull your characters out of the starting region where you have the campaign begin and take them on this overland adventure to reach the coast, maybe to go to the city of Waterdeep or whatever's in your world. And along the way, they are constantly being harassed by these storms that are raising skeletons right beneath their feet. Idea number 2, the hag could be brewing Boiled Ghouls. So they have this huge cauldron filled with elf's blood and necromancer's spit, and any elf corpse that is thrown into this pot eventually boils and rises its way back up to the surface as a ghoul. And there's 2 things I really like about this idea. One is it is a unique creation myth for ghouls. Now, in my world, monsters can be created all kinds of ways. Not every 2 ghouls have to be made the same way. This is just one fun way for you to bring ghouls into your world. And it also, kind of at the same time, gives them a very unique appearance. Normally, ghouls are depicted as these long-limbed, lanky things that look very malnourished. And in this instance, it says, what if they're actually more like that zombie in one of the earlier seasons of The Walking Dead that had fallen down into a well and become so bloated and waterlogged? That would be really cool for your ghouls. That they look just like this thing. They have like this foul black liquid weeping out of their eyes and their mouth. Their skin is sort of translucent from all the water that seeped into them. When they're running around and screaming, they're kind of jiggling with just how bloated they are, which maybe impacts how quickly they move as opposed to a normal ghoul. These ones are a little bit slower, but when they are killed, they could release boiling hot steam. Or here's something cool too. To play into the idea of this being a sort of a stew, like the hag is cooking these ghouls, maybe she actually is adding ingredients into it like a real stew. There are diced fingers, there are crabs and frogs being added for flavor, blighted herbs are tossed in there, and there's sort of signs of that in the ghoul. And so maybe you give a character with proficiency in cooking tools or whatever, advantage on this check though, to investigate it and start to get a sense of like, this elf ghoul thing doesn't look like it just was eating crabs and frogs. It looks like it was prepared with this. And that's sort of foreshadowing how these ghouls came to be when your characters go off to fight this hag, right? So that's the first thing I think is so cool. It's my favorite thing about this idea is just totally different appearance and creation idea for ghouls. The second thing I like is it takes a very common adventure hook of like, oh my gosh, our graveyards are being dug up and our bodies are being taken away. That happens to human communities so often, and it puts it into an elf community. Something a little more fantastical and mystical and remote for your characters to have to go off and discover. I think that's cool to show that there are horrible things happening, not just to the humans of your world, but also these other more fantastical races and communities. And then that's a way just for your characters to get drawn out of the starting town, go meet this community of elves and be sent off on an adventure and build relationships with them, as opposed to just always the mayor of some human town. Idea number 3 is Miraculous Potions. The hag is brewing up these very high-level potions that they are selling off to not your characters. That is what I think will make this idea unique, because like, oh yeah, hags brewing potions and trading them off, that's nothing new. But in this case, the hag is giving them not out to your characters. They're not trying to entice and corrupt them, but instead selling them to the most desperate villagers and townsfolk and farmers for things like their children, their livelihoods, their most cherished possessions, their businesses, their family heirlooms, anything that you can kind of think up, right? These hags are not interested in bartering with the heroes because they know they're probably, like, the heroes are hard to corrupt, right? And if you have players that are anything like mine, when you offer them a deal from a hag or a demon, most of them will say no. They'll want to be the valiant hero who refuses the deal, and that's fine. That's cool. Like, be the heroes, right? But that doesn't mean there aren't people out in your world who aren't more susceptible to these types of offers, or are in situations that are so dire that they might give in to temptation and give away something. Now, a farmer who trades off their daughter or son to get a potion, yeah, that's not a great person. But someone who might give up their family's heirloom sword so they can get a potion of invisibility, so they can sneak into the mayor's home and steal a bunch of gems and flee to a neighboring town and become filthy rich. Like, that's a little more interesting. And when your characters are sent off as like bounty hunters to bring back this person, and they sort of learn why they did it and how they did it, and the person responsible, the hag's responsible for giving them this potion, now you have characters in a sort of sticky situation where they're like, oh, like, do we bring this person back? And where they're going to be like, maybe, you know, depending on your level of medievalness in your world, like they're going to be hung for their crimes, or they're going to be imprisoned and have to serve a bunch of time in the dungeons beneath the mayor's mansion or whatever. Like, are we going to do that? Or do we go try and kill this hag who's responsible? And how do we prove this to the mayor? And are they going to send people after us? Like, this is where you can start to get some very, I don't know if I would call this like a political campaign, but sort of those similar narrative threads you can start tugging of. These are difficult decisions to make, not because they are life or death, but because the people in the world who will perceive our actions might not perceive them the way we want them to. That's what makes this interesting. And the hags can just keep giving out as many of these potions to as many different people as you want. What happens when you have villagers or townsfolk running around with dragon's breath, or they're able to hurl a fireball, or they're able to resurrect somebody, and this is all outside of the character's control? That is what I think makes this idea so interesting. And idea number 4 is healing streams. So your hag is brewing up some sort of medicinal tonic that is actually boiling over in the cauldron, spilling out and running out across the nearby wilderness as these small streams. And rumors have begun to circulate amongst the hunters, the rangers, the townsfolk on the edge of this forest or whatever, that anyone who drinks from this stream seems to actually have a lot of vitality returned to them. So maybe this stream offers the benefit of a potion of healing, or it maybe gives like a character who drinks from the stream, if they go down to 0 HP, they start with 2 death saves automatically having been successful. So they only need 1 more success to stabilize. Whatever you want the healing effect to be, I think it needs to be pretty good to entice characters to drink from it. And so ideally, your characters are just like, oh, sweet. Like, hey, this is a great perk. What a fun little thing that'll help us as we explore this forest and stuff. We can always just go back to the stream and keep drinking from it. But that's what you want them to do, because then the curse kicks in. And the curse is, anytime you actually drink a potion of healing after you've drank from this river, that potion of healing instead becomes a potion of poison. It is lethal to you, and it does damage, and it causes you to be poisoned, and you could even have it maybe reduce your max HP. And I would tack on here as well that anyone who drinks from the stream is highly susceptible to the hag's magic. So when your characters eventually figure out, this stream is not actually a good thing, and people in town are starting to act really weird, and those are the people who have been charmed by the hag, or if it's a night hag that's doing this, they're terrorizing their dreams, and it's extra wearing on their consciousness, and people are starting to go a little manic, a little crazy. Whatever you decide to have the outcomes be, the characters need to start traveling upstream. And speaking of upstream, like, you, at some point, I think it needs to be emphasized or kind of pointed out in the story, like, yeah, these streams are pretty new. Like, it's not like these streams have just been here forever. We don't know where they came from. They sort of just popped up overnight. And so you would hope maybe one character is like, that's a little sus. Like, maybe before we drink this, should we go figure out what it is? But I think inevitably someone's gonna be like, nah, I'm drinking from this stream. And now as the characters are traveling upstream, right, and they get to this fight with this hag, you might have an entire group, or just some of the group, that is going to have disadvantage on their saving throws to resist the hag's charming magics or her spells, right? They're going to take more damage, and they won't be able to use their potions of healing, and that fight now will be a lot more lethal, which is always what you want in your BBG fights. I hope you got some inspiration out of those 4 ideas for what your hags can brew up in their cauldrons. I wanted to let you know here at the end that the whole reason I even thought to make this list was because my most recent Sunday homebrew drop over on the Patreon was a set of 12 Fae-themed VTT terrain assets. One of them was this cool cauldron that I added some like goat hoofs to the bottom so it could clip-clop around and follow the hag. There's like some goat heads as the handles. There's also 4 pre-populated maps that use all the different terrain assets and some printout sheets to help you prep, or like templates to prep for these maps, right? All of that is over on the Patreon at the $3 tier. And also, this list was first released this morning as part of the morning ritual, which was something I'd kind of been trying out last year, but now that my Kickstarter's over and we're kind of getting more into the spring of this year and I'm feeling my energy coming back, I want to start it back up again. It's basically just a free to follow on the Patreon morning blog, and some days it's going to have, like this past one had 4 ways that I indulged my RPG hobby, so it's always going to have some hobby updates. It also includes a random table, and other days it might have whatever other random lists I want to include onto it, but basically it is the best way for you to follow along in my hobby endeavors, whatever they might be, within the church for free. It doesn't cost anything to follow this, but if you are a tithe-giving patron, then you get the added benefit of not only getting what I release every Sunday, but you also are going to get ideas every day of kind of how to use this stuff in your campaigns. And I'll mention here, like, and you're going to start hearing me plug the Patreon a lot more now that my Kickstarter is over, which, by the way, thanks to everybody who backed that. But if you are someone who wants to build an entire world, you want your fantasy setting to not only be your own creation, but you want it to look immersive, you want everything to look like it's from that same setting, then my Patreon is probably one of the best places to do that, especially if you like my very vibrant Morkborg inspired color palette of greens, blacks, yellows, and whites, right? You're gonna get all the different VTT minis that I make, all the different terrain assets I make, all the different dungeon maps and everything to use in your games, and it's all gonna look cohesive and like it's from the same place, which at least for me is one of my biggest obsessions as a GM. It's like, I just want everything to feel like it's from the world. I don't want it to feel like a bunch of haphazardly thrown together assets from a bunch of different creators. Not that those other creators don't do amazing work, but I just have always felt like I just want it to all look the same. And so if you're someone that is hyper paranoid about that, like I am, then you should go check out the Patreon for $3 a month. But anyways, that's it for me today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we say these things in their unholy names. Amen.